I am waiting for people to join for the webcast. So if you are planning to watch this later, then you might see a little bit of silence as I wait just a few moments to see if anybody joins our webcast. Hold on, my daughter is asking for me. I will be right back. Paige, I'm coming up, honey. Okay. You take them off? Great, I'm back. Sorry, I apologize for that. My daughter needed to change her pajamas really fast. All right, so I see Tanya. Is anybody else here? Okay. All right. Well, hello. We will get started, and if anybody else joins, then they can jump right in. So since it looks like it's only the two of us, do you have any questions that you want me to go ahead and address before I just start talking? Okay. All right. Well, then I will just go for it. And if you have a comment or a question that you want to ask, just please type it in the box. All right. I see a couple other. Yes. Okay. The main question that I have been getting is, how do I know what the message is, or what message should I choose for the paper? And I think that's the hardest part of the paper, is choosing what you're going to write about and choosing what message you want to cover. So I'll give you a couple of examples of things that you could choose, and then we can walk an example through the rest of the paper. So great. We've got a couple of folks here. Awesome. So as I was saying, the message is going to be the hardest part of the paper. So I'm looking at the assignment document here and kind of going through the parts. So what I would recommend is taking each piece of the paper and kind of breaking it down into sections. So write an introduction to your paper, and then part one, focus on the message. So what I would recommend doing is scrolling through your social media, like your Instagram or your Facebook, or consider the news sources that you watch, or the music that you listen to, and think about if any of the themes or things that you see attached to the list there: health, beauty, diet, fitness, finances or money, religion, spirituality, politics, romance, etc. And if you see a message that you think is somewhat interesting, then choose that to focus on your paper. So for example, just tonight, I was at the gym running, and there were 5 TV screens in front of me, all talking about different things. In the course of that 30 minutes on the treadmill, I received several messages about politics. I saw specific tweets given by Donald Trump that I could actually go, if I was following him, and see those tweets and write a whole paper about that. I saw a whole newscast about commentary on that tweet. So that would be something different, right? It's a different type of message than the actual tweet itself. I also saw HGTV, and I saw commercials that were being portrayed through that about weight loss and healthy eating and things like that. So I could choose any of those messages, and those are all from mass media. If I were to scroll through my own Instagram or Facebook, one of the things that I would notice is that I see family members posting when they have like long-term anniversaries. So for example, my uncle and aunt just celebrated their 40-year wedding anniversary, and they posted this really long post all about their love for one another, and this poem about we're a tree and the roots were connected and things like that, right? So I could choose that message in particular, and just their post about their marriage and how seeing that has impacted me. I also teach fitness classes, and so somehow Facebook knows that. And as you know, we get all sorts of advertisements. So I now get a ton of fitness videos that are all throughout my feed. And some of them are really helpful and interesting, and I watch them and take notes for my classes. And others of them feel like pressure to conform to some type of diet and exercise program. So I could choose any one particular message from that feed. So those are kind of a wide variety of things that you could address. Another option could be in terms of romance. If you think about song lyrics that you listen to, so just turning on your iTunes or whatever and thinking about the lyrics to a song that you particularly like or listen to frequently, and thinking about how that message would impact you. Religion and spirituality. I follow several different authors and speakers, and often they post quotes or short videos or live things about what they're speaking about in terms of faith, and I could talk about what those messages send to me. So those are just some options of different messages that you could choose. So I'll pause there and see if there's a follow-up question about that. Okay, so as you can tell, I am looking for you to analyze a more specific message than a general message. So there could be a general theme that you're trying to address, but in terms of the paper, you're going to choose a particular message in itself. So for the sake of this example, let's take a look at the post from my uncle and aunt about their 40th wedding anniversary. So I would choose that particular message. And in the first section where it says to describe the message, I would walk through that model of communication, which is found, I think, on page 9 in your textbook. And I would talk about all the different elements. So, yes, this model right here in your text. So I would look at this and I would say, who is the source? Who is the receiver? So the source was my Aunt Hilda, and I am the receiver. She also sent it to all of her Facebook friends, so there would be a lot of other receivers to that message. She probably also intended for her husband to see that message so that he could feel kind of good feelings about their marriage. But for this paper, I would mostly focus on me as the receiver. I would look at the channels that were used, so the message was posted on Facebook, and so that's a particular channel of communication. There were words, there was a poem, and there was a picture of them. So those would all be different elements of the message that were sent through that channel. I could consider any feed forward or things that were brought up. That did they set up the message to say something like, I know not everybody gets to experience a long-term marriage, but I want to celebrate mine. They didn't, but they could have acknowledged something like that. They could have said something like, although it hasn't been an easy road, I want to celebrate X, right? So there could be some type of feed forward in that message, but in this case, there wasn't. I would look at the feedback that they give. So did I like the message? Did I just click the little like button? Did I love it? Did I actually type a comment as feedback, right? So how did I respond as the receiver to that message? So in this particular case, I just hit the like button to let them know I observed their message. And then what noise could have impacted me in that instance? So I want to think about semantic noise. Is there any noise about marriage, about relationships, about words that they use that might have been more familiar to them and not to me that I could analyze? Excuse me. I want to look at psychological noise. So thankfully, I am in a happy marriage, getting ready to celebrate my 13th wedding anniversary. But if I wasn't, then I could talk about maybe how I had psychological noise about receiving that. It was harder for me to understand it and things like that. I could talk about physiological noise. Did I receive it when I was particularly tired at the end of the day, or was this a break for me from work? So it was kind of a refreshing message. I could also think about psychological noise that I have because I know these people, right? So I already have judgments about them. I have thoughts about what their relationship is like and why they would be posting this and things like that. And so I would bring in and describe some of that noise that's impacting my ability to receive that message well as their ability to send the message. So those are the ways that you could analyze that message using that. The last piece of that model that you may want to address is context, and that's everything going around in that particular situation. So for the example from me working out at the gym, the context of me receiving all of these messages from the media that I input was at the gym with like 5 different TV screens at one time. And I was not really focused on them, but they were kind of slightly impacting me, right? So the context of me receiving those messages is different than me following a particular tweet or newscaster on social media, and I'm looking for those messages and I'm trying to find them and I'm talking to my friends about them and things like that, right? It's more fleeting in terms of how they impacted me. So that first section is really just looking at what the message is and how you receive it and the factors that impact how you receive that message. So that's section 1 of the paper, is just a description. And it's a lot about identifying the different elements of that model, showing me that you understand that model and you can apply it to a particular message. So I'll pause there again and see if there are any questions. Okay, so I'm not seeing questions. So I'm going to move on to part 2, where you are going to analyze and evaluate the message. Now, this is the heftiest part of the paper at 60 points. And so you are going to focus mostly on describing this aspect of the paper. So this is really asking you to look at the information that you've learned in chapters 2 to 4 and consider how those apply to the message that you've chosen. And it could be the impact that you already know, or you're thinking, well, I don't really feel like I'm impacted. So what could the impact be of this message? And so you need to address at least 3 concepts in the paper from those courses. And they need to be clear course concepts, vocabulary from those chapters. I would highly recommend bolding the terms that you are using in your analysis. You are welcome to use more than 3. I think that choosing 3 and applying them very well with critical thinking is going to be your best bet. If you want to do 4, that's totally fine. Or if you think that there's kind of a couple of terms that help you to clarify, then that would be helpful. So let's look at how I might analyze a political message. So if I am looking at one of the messages that I received from CNN and I am looking at their publicity around the Hurricane Florence and how Donald Trump said that he did a great job handling Puerto Rico, right? So I would first describe all of that message and the different contexts and things that impacted that. But now I'm going to analyze it. And so I'm going to say, did the way that I perceived that message have anything to do with selective attention? Did I pay attention to a message that was relevant to me because I'm facing the hurricane in North Carolina, and so it's something that's on my mind? Did I pay attention to this message because I'm already looking for ways that Donald Trump makes mistakes that will confirm my existing belief? Am I interested in paying attention to this message because I have family in Puerto Rico and I'm thinking about how his comments would really translate into their real life, right? So there's a lot of different ways that that particular message could hit a variety of people in the class in very different ways. So I could look at that. I could look at cultural contexts. I could look at models of presidential interactions in the past and how Twitter is kind of a new format that President Trump is using more than other presidents have, well, mainly because it's a new technology, but also it's impacting his presidency. And so I would look at how that channel is a means of impression formation for him, right? So that's from chapter 3, thinking of strategies that he's using for either face saving or sharing ideas to influence other people. I could analyze power dynamics. Now that's in chapter 1, but you could definitely use that still and look at the type of power that someone has sending that message. So is the person that's sending the message to you have referent power, legitimate power, coercive power, and kind of explain how that impacts the message that you receive or send. You might talk about how a message that you receive impacts your ability to listen. So if I was distracted because I'm running at the Y and I just hear a snippet of a news story and I only pick up on the thing that stands out to me the most, did I really understand the whole message, right? So now I'm looking at my listening ability and distractions and things like that. So again, look at the material from those chapters and you can apply them to the message and analyze that. So you're really looking at how a message could impact you and using course terminology to help you do that. Now, the last part 3 are your action items. And so in this part, you are going to choose 2 different actions that you could take based on your analysis in light of this message. So this could mean that if I'm looking at the post from my aunt and uncle, that I see their relationship as a model and their referent power is one that I want to emulate. And their relationship has set some cultural expectations for longevity in marriage that I would like to also have in my relationship. And so my action item might be that on my anniversary, I'm going to post a similar message to what they posted. Another action item could be that I'm going to contact my aunt and kind of interview her and talk to her about things that have helped her marriage work. So I am going to seek out a relationship with her and try to understand how their marriage has thrived. I might look at the poem that she posted and say, well, I'm going to actually print that poem out or write that poem out and post it on my wall as a reminder for my relationship, because I know just seeing a message one time isn't going to impact it on my brain. And so I want to keep those messages in my mind. If I'm analyzing the political message, I might say, okay, I recognize I'm experiencing a lot of noise and I'm having difficulty really understanding what's going on. So my action is I'm going to actually go and look at the full story. I'm going to read about what Donald Trump said from 3 different sources with 3 different perspectives and make my own decision based on a variety of opinions rather than just the 1 5-second clip that I saw while I was running at the gym. Another action item I could be in that state, I could say, well, I really disagree with what he said. And so now my action is going to be to seek out ways that I can stand up against that particular thing. Or it might be that I say, well, I really disagree, but I'm not sure why, or I want to understand that further. So I'm going to seek out someone that I saw, like a friend of mine that I saw liked a tweet of his. And so I'm going to reach out to them out of curiosity to listen better and say, can you tell me about why you're more supportive of this particular policy or example, right? So an action could be to go seek that relationship and seek that connection. It could be that you've seen a lot of negative posts in any particular way from a friend or person, and so you choose to unfriend them or not follow them or not look at their messages anymore because they're particularly hurtful to your self-esteem or things like that, right? So there's any range of action items that you might choose, but you need 2 clear ones. And so I would say the first action item that I might take is X and explain it. The second action item that I could take is Y, and I'm going to explain that and apply it to your message and relationship. And there you're going to talk about what could be the outcome of taking that action item. So if you want, you could actually do the action, or you could just think about and explain what might happen. So that's basically the entire paper and the way that you would walk through it. I do want you to cite any external sources you can cite the textbook. It's probably going to be your main source for the paper. But if you are citing any, mass media posts and things like that, make sure that you give credit to where those things are coming from in your MLA citations. So the goal of this paper, from my mind, is to help you think critically about the messages that you take in and receive in ways that are important to you. So if politics is important to you, then choose a political message. If religion and faith is important to you, choose a spiritual message. If romance and love relationships are important to you, choose that type of message, right? So choose something that you think would be interesting to analyze, not something that you think I want you to analyze, because the paper is really about your own self-growth. Again, I'm going to pause here and see if anybody has any questions now that I'm done kind of explaining the process of the paper. How do I cite posts on social media? There are a couple ways that you could do that. You could take a screenshot if you're going to, post a shot of something that you like, something from a friend, something like that, and include it in your paper. I need to look into that. Sorry, I should probably know that more off the top of my head. But you can look up in the MLA style guide and see if they have something about that. But if it's a post between you and a friend or something, just saying when you got that information, where it came from is sufficient. So just give me the information so I know you're not making it up, right? I'm probably not going to go look at your friend's posts, but I can look into that and see if there is another. Let me see if there's. Okay. Okay, so I am looking at a citing social media MLA guide. And let's see if I can share my screen with you. Or if I can do that. I'm trying to see if I can share my screen, but it doesn't look like it can on here right now. Okay, so I'm looking at the citing social media guide, and it says, for Instagram, you would put the person that their last name, and then in quotes, you would just describe it. So it says happy latte. Instagram. I'm actually just going to post this in the comments so you can find it yourself. That should help you. Does anybody else have any questions? My pleasure. Great. I'm glad it was helpful. If anybody has other questions that you want to email me this week, if you have power and access to the internet, please do email me. I will be checking as much as I can. Yeah, you missed the whole explanation part, but I'll repost it so you can watch the whole video. Let's see. If it's a message that I received through Facebook, what example of context can I describe? Okay, so there's a lot that you could put in with context. So if you look in chapter 1 in your textbook where it talks about context, there are 4 different layers to context on page 12 in your textbook. So you would look at the physical context. This is the room, workplace, outdoor space where the communication takes place. So the context for a Facebook message could be that you were in class and scrolling through your phone when you shouldn't have been, right? And you saw this Facebook post. It could be that it was late at night and you were sitting in the room by yourself scrolling through Facebook, and that's when you got the message. It could be that you got a Facebook notification on your phone that came up, and so you went directly to that site while you're walking down the street, right? So think about the actual physical space that you were in when you received that message. If you went back to it again at a different time, so you had more time to think about it, that type of thing. Social psychological context thinks about social distinctions and psychological differences between individuals. So this would be, what's the status of your relationship? So the context with my aunt and uncle is my aunt, they are actually my godparents, and they've really been influential in my life. And so they have a strong influence in the messages that I take in. So if it was another aunt or uncle that I'm not as close with, that would be a different context to that message. Or if it was a random person that I didn't know very well, that's like an acquaintance that posted that same thing about their marriage, it might have not impacted me to the same extent. The temporal context is the time dimension. And this is basically like, was it appropriate? So in this temporal context, my anniversary is coming up in a couple weeks. And so I was particularly interested in a message about a wedding, right? Or an anniversary. So it was timely for me versus being like 6 months down the road when I'm not really thinking about my own anniversary. And then the cultural context talks about rules, norms, beliefs, attitudes of people communicating. And so on Facebook, right? There are particular ways that we expect people to communicate. So did the message follow those cultural expectations? Did they write in all capital letters? Was it a trending topic of the day? Was it about Hurricane Florence? Right. So what is the context of how people are interacting? So hopefully that helps with context around Facebook. And Taya, if you have a particular question, I'm happy to answer it as well. But I'm going to link to the webcast so you can rewatch it afterwards. You're welcome. All right. So I think that's going to be all. Does anybody have any other questions that they really would like to ask before I end the session? Another burning topic that might be on your mind is the hurricane. And I know that it's something that we're all thinking about right now. So just please trust that I will work with you all as much as needed, and we'll be in contact as much as I can over the next few days and week if we need to make any adjustments to the class. But unless you hear otherwise, just keep on progressing like normal, and I will send out any messages as needed. Thanks for coming tonight. If you have any feedback for me about the webcast that you think would help make it better in the future, please email me. I would love to hear from you. Thanks.